Hey everybody, this is Darren Van Dam and you are watching Flick Connection, the show that helps you get more out of movies, and today I'm going to tell you about 20 really great movies you can currently watch on Netflix. Now this is going to be a mixed list. If you're new to the channel, welcome, but I normally do genres like all horror, like I did last week, so there are no horror picks on this list. However, I've got a great mix of some new movies, some older movies, some things that are some hidden gems maybe you haven't seen, some you definitely have. So let's go ahead and kick this list off with one of my personal favorites on the list, Kon Tiki. This is a true story about Thor Heyerdahl. 1947, he and his crew built a balsa wood raft and drifted across the Pacific Ocean in an attempt to prove that Polynesia was settled by tribes from South America. Now, this is an important story in history because it happened at a time where we basically had stopped exploring. We felt, as the human race, we felt we had seen everything, and the spirit of exploration was dwindling. This really rekindled it, and they're somewhat accredited with us going to the moon. That may not have happened, and certainly not have happened when it did, had it not been inspired by this newfound sense of adventure. Really amazing movie. It's simply told. It's not really extravagant in the way it's shot, but it's beautiful. Now, for one that I know a lot of you have seen, if not everybody, The Fifth Element. The only reason to include such a well-worn movie like this is because Netflix does such a terrible job of alerting you when movies like this are on the platform. I really like this one a lot. I felt like it has held up really well with time. Yes, some of the effects, you can tell that they're fake, but you can tell that with a lot of modern movies nowadays as well. And The Fifth Element holds up because it's got a great mix of practical effects as well. A good companion to this is Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets, which you can also check out over on Amazon Prime. Again, if you're new here, I do list on Amazon Prime as well. Another sci-fi movie that just got added back to Netflix, but is only a couple of years old, is Snowpiercer. Now this one takes place way, way in the future. All of humanity has died out except for a fairly small group of people that live on this bullet train. And this bullet train is the only way they can stay alive. It generates the energy to sort of keep them warm and move. And the cool thing about this movie is it's got extreme classism. There's a people all the way in steerage, all the way in the back of the train that basically keep everything running. And then you've got elites as you work your way up. And this movie basically serves as a great metaphor for class warfare. And there is some warfare in it. Tilda Swinton's in it and has a really incredible role. Chris Evans is in it. Ed Harris. Really great performances all around. Great sort of production design. It looks wild. And it's just a very interesting and different type of movie. Something in a similar vein is The Wandering Earth. Now this is a new release from China, and it is foreign language. However, even though I encourage watching the subtitles over the dubbing, I did scope out the dubbing, and the dubbing is pretty good on this one. Actually, it's better than anything I've ever heard. All the principal characters sound really great. A couple of ancillary characters sound terrible, which is typically the case for everybody. But this one, again, way in the future, and the sun is expanding, and the only way to save humanity is to move Earth. And they do so with these giant engines that they build into the Earth. Sounds really crazy and far-fetched, and it is. A lot of this stretches the bounds of science, to say the least, but it makes for a very entertaining movie. You get elements of a lot of different movies. You get elements of things kind of like Day After Tomorrow. There's a little bit of Interstellar in there, and it all works together pretty well. I found this to be really, really entertaining. Like I said, some modern CGI is not as good as it used to be, and I think it's because they're doing so much. There's so many effects in this movie, and so many action sequences, and they could not have made it all top-notch. I can't imagine how much it would have cost. And I think they did a good balance. Everything looks good enough, and as a result, they were able to just cram it with all kinds of stuff. Now, I will say this is not a good movie, but it's a very entertaining movie, making it thereby good enough to watch and making it a good recommendation. I said there were no horror movies. I lied. There is one because I didn't include it on my most recent list because I've talked about it before. But The Autopsy of Jane Doe, I think, is one of the best horror movies you can currently catch on Netflix. There's a lot of great ones. If you want to check out that list, there is a link in the description below. But Autopsy of Jane Doe stars Brian Cox, Emile Hirsch, and they run a morgue and they're doing an autopsy on an unknown girl. And things just progressively get a little weirder, then crazier, then wilder. It's got a good sort of haunted house vibe. It's got a really macabre sense around it. I really enjoyed this one mainly because it's just different. It didn't have the same beats and the same feel that so many bigger budget horror movies have today. I just felt like I was watching something different and it had sort of a different spirit about it, and that was really refreshing on top of it just being really well crafted. The Hateful Eight has been on Netflix for a long time. However, they just added an extended cut. I know that movie was already long to begin with, but the extended cut has some additional scenes. So the extended cut is going to be great for people who have not seen it yet. Watch it that way. There's a little bit of extra juice. And if you really like the movie and maybe you haven't seen it in a while, the extended cut, I believe, can only be found on Netflix right now. So it's well worth watching there. If you've had enough of the Hateful Eight, I don't know that you're going to get that much more out of the extended cut to make it worth sitting all the way through it again. To me, it's not my favorite Tarantino movie, but it is great. I do like it a lot. If you haven't seen it, I would akin it more to Reservoir Dogs than any of his other work. I've got two movies from Australia for you. One is called Goldstone. It's a great sort of neo-noir movie. It's a detective story. It takes place out in the desert, out in the outback, if you will, and involves some human trafficking. So it is a very adult movie, but very good. It's subtle though. It's subdued. It's got a slow pace to it, but I found it to be very interesting. It's about an Aboriginal, I believe he's half Aboriginal, cop that is investigating. So there's some odd like racism elements that will be familiar to Americans, but they're also different and unique to Australia. So that aspect was interesting. The mining aspect is interesting. The outback thing is great. The sex trafficking angle is just unsettling. But again, a really great little detective story that's got more than one good shootout in it. The other one from Australia is fairly different and still, I don't want to say just as gritty. It's grittier. It takes place not after the apocalypse, but sort of like among the apocalypse. The military, or at least militias, still appear to be prevalent, but humanity has been thinned out. People are struggling to survive. Guy Pearce stars in it and looks about as grizzled as he's probably ever gonna look. This one is a really butch movie. There's a better movie, in my opinion, called Animal Kingdom. This is done by the same director, really capable director. This is a good thriller that just happens to take place in this apocalyptic setting, and it's a great vision of the apocalypse in the sense that it feels fairly real, but also different at the same time. I enjoyed this one a lot, and I know a lot of you did as well because I recommended this one about a year ago and got a lot of positive feedback on it. The Fighter is one that a pretty broad audience saw, mainly because Mark Wahlberg is in it. Anything he's in, people seem to go nuts for. This is a smaller movie for him, but it stars Christian Bale as his like crack-addicted brother, and he won an Academy Award for this. Wahlberg does a great job, but he plays a fighter. It's not really a sports movie. It is about him being a fighter and training and trying to win multiple fights, but it really ends up being more about the family relationship and the brother's drug addiction, which sounds kind of lame when I'm talking about it. However, it works really, really well. I mean, the movie sort of steers you in one direction and then takes a hard left, and it worked. It worked for me. I bought it. I went along with it and felt like it was a really great movie by the end. And then to wrap up the first 10 on this list, Get Low stars Robert Duvall and Bill Murray and is a really great story. It's kind of a dark comedy, but Robert Duvall plays an old, grizzled man that is pretty sure he's dying and decides to have what's referred to as a living wake, which is a party while you're still alive. However, he's the old man in town that never talks to anybody, that everyone's scared of, and that there are a lot of horror stories about. And yet he's wanting everyone to come to this party, even though they don't know him, and share the stories that they know about him. It's a really great premise. Bill Murray is really fantastic in it. Like, I love Bill Murray. This is one of his more interesting roles. I'm not going to say his best by any means, but he plays a very different sort of character, and I really enjoyed that aspect of it. And it's just a really great movie. This is one that I think will appeal to a broader audience, and it's kind of out of my wheelhouse. It's not quite the type of movie I'd normally recommend, so hopefully some of you appreciate it, because I know there's been a little bit of a call for that in the comments. Before moving on to the other 10 on this list, I'm not going to say my top 10 because I really didn't rank these. I tried to sort of group them together. But if you're new here, definitely click that subscribe button and be sure to click the little bell icon, because YouTube is not going to notify you when I put out new Netflix lists just like this one. All right, now to kick off the second half of this list, I've got a couple of really great foreign films that are well worth watching. You're not going to want to miss these. Starting with Hero. This is a really great Jet Li movie. I remember when it came out in theaters, Quentin Tarantino put his name on it. He produced it in terms of like getting it released in America, but beautiful. I mean, amazing cinematography in this one. And the dialogue's really understated in this one. This one's more sort of like about little vignettes, basically fights that are really beautifully shot. They each have their own unique color palette, like really bold, strong color palettes. So visually, this one's just amazing. And again, because you're watching mostly combat, and again, just beautiful combat. You're not having to read a lot, which I get it. Not everybody likes reading subtitles. This is one you can do minimal reading and really get, I hate this phrase, but a visual feast in terms of the cinematography. It's really an amazing movie that I haven't seen in a really long time, but it has stuck with me. I really remember this one really well because it's just so vivid. Now, one that's kind of on the other end of the spectrum that's from South Korea is called Burning. And this is a new release. It just came out in 2018. Critical acclaim, and it deserves it. This is really great. Now, to me, this one plays out more like a novel. It feels like literature. So any of my readers out there, I think you'll really enjoy this one. But Steven Yeun, who's most known from The Walking Dead, has a really great role in this. I honestly can't say too much about it. I can't give away what happens with this one. For lack of a better phrase, this one is a slow burn, but the payoff is well worth it. And if you like that sort of slower feel where it feels a little bit more like literature, like I said, you're really going to love this one. South Korea is really known for their dark dramas, and this is just the latest in a long history of those. Liam Neeson's latest movie, Cold Pursuit, is actually a shot-for-shot remake of a movie called In Order of Disappearance, and they're actually both done by the same director. This is a really cool movie about a guy whose son goes missing, and he just goes on the warpath, just taking out gangsters, basically, and it takes place out in the snow, and there is some blood on the snow in this one. And the cool thing about it is he's an not an ice trucker, he's a snowplow driver, and he doesn't have experience killing people, but the movie plays out really well. It's got a little bit of a Fargo vibe at times. It's got an edgier vibe at other times. It's just got a good mix of stuff, and I really enjoyed this one. Now, to get off of the foreign films, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas is another classic. Again, just telling you it's on there because I know Netflix is probably not letting you know, but I love this one. I will say, when I first saw this one, I was too young. I really didn't understand what was going on. The movie's kind of a mess if you're not on board, but once you're on board with what these guys are doing out in the desert, the way this Terry Gilliam shot this movie is just incredible. I don't know how a human being can sort of like conceptualize something like this and then go out and with hundreds of other human beings and film it and then edit it and make it all work. And somehow this movie feels like this crazy mess of an acid trip, yet it works. You can go along the journey. I love all the chapters in this one. it's so much fun to watch. It's been a really long time since I've seen it, and it's been a longer time since I've probably said this on the channel, but just talking about this movie now, I might even watch this one tonight. Heathers is a really great one, starring Winona Ryder and Christian Slater from 1988. Think Mean Girls if the girls in Mean Girls were way meaner. And maybe a little evil on top of it. So it's edgier than Mean Girls. Mean Girls got all this like praise when it came out. Everyone was going nuts for that movie. Heathers is a way better movie. It's way more entertaining. It's way better acted. Sorry to everyone who took part in Mean Girls, but it's just better, and it came way before it. I really enjoy this one. It is a cult classic. This one does have a cult following. If you never saw it, I'm not going to say this one's so important that it's a rite of passage, but if you've never saw it and you like my recommendations, I would definitely give this one a shot. This is a strong recommendation coming from me, but odds are most of you watching have at least seen this one once. And since this is a top 20 on Netflix, I've got a couple of honorable mentions with Deliverance and Hell or High Water. I'd love to tell you about those, but those were actually just listed on a recent video about double features where there was actually two of me. So if you want to check out that video, there's a link in the description below as well, along with the horror list. By the time you finish watching those, you'll have enough Netflix recommendations to get you through the rest of the summer. But let's go ahead and move on to my final 5 on this list of 20. The Founder is about Ray Kroc, who technically, I guess, quote unquote, founded McDonald's. He actually stole it from the McDonald's brothers. It stars Michael Keaton as Ray Kroc, and it's a really great telling of it. The thing I liked about this one is the movie, the way it was written, didn't seem to really take a stance one way or the other as to whether or not he was actually in the wrong. It just sort of tells you what happened and sort of lets you make up your mind on your own. And I think that that's pretty great. I was really craving a burger and fries while watching this movie, so you might want to plan for that ahead of watching this one. But it's a great, fairly historically accurate telling of the founding of not just McDonald's, but fast food in America. I mean, even if you don't eat fast food, it's such a major part of American culture that I think most Americans kind of owe it to themselves to see this movie. And it's well done. It's really well worth watching. I wouldn't say it's one of the best of the year that it came out, but it's close. It almost could have been. And in that sense, still really well worth watching as far as something on Netflix. The Dark Crystal, Jim Henson's The Dark Crystal, is on Netflix right now. The reason this movie is on this list is because Netflix is soon to release a series on The Dark Crystal. They've released a teaser. It looks sick. I think it comes out in the fall, so stay tuned for that. But now is a great time to watch the original movie, which is really just this dark, crazy fantasy from Jim Henson. I wish we got more of these. I love Jim Henson's work, but there's something special about this, and I wish they were able to churn out some more. Luckily, we're going to get this series. Hopefully it's good. Incredibles 2 is a really incredible movie from Pixar. I've said it before on the channel. Pixar, to me, not only is their artwork the best in the business, but their storytelling is really top-notch. Very rarely do they miss the mark. I feel like they almost did with Incredibles 2, but only because they did so much with this movie. There's so much action in this movie. The story gets a little bit lost, but they still manage to pull it out. Like, it still works. But I'm telling you, this movie is crammed with action. I think anybody could watch this one. You don't need to wait for the kids. It's kid-friendly. Really little kids are probably going to lose interest because it is just like, it's almost it's almost a mind-numbing amount of action. It's like Fury Road levels of action in this movie. It's crazy, but again, it works. All right, home stretch. I got 2 left. Gosford Park is a really great murder mystery movie. It takes place in this giant manor in Great Britain. And again, murder mystery dinner party kind of a thing, but really well crafted. Nominated for Best Picture the year it came out. Fans of Downton Abbey would love this. If you were a fan of that show and you didn't know this movie existed, make this the first one you watch off of this list. If you don't know what Downton Abbey is, I've never watched it, and I still really love Gosford Park. It feels a little stale. It feels like it's going to be a little too dry when you first start watching it, but just wait, and it really gets into this interesting murder mystery story fairly quickly. All right, and my final pick, again, just like my Amazon list earlier in the week, is a documentary. Didn't really mean to do that on purpose. It just sort of shook out that way, but stick with me. If you don't like documentaries, just trust me on this one. But Amy is a movie about Amy Winehouse. Now, you do not need to know or care or even like Amy Winehouse to really get a lot out of this. Now, if you don't know, Amy Winehouse was an alcoholic, a drug addict for a young pop star. She aged very quickly and ultimately died as a result of her illness. Now, this documentary does a really incredible job of chronicling not just her rise in her career, but also her downfall. It's heartbreaking. It shows kind of how firm of a grip addiction can really get on you, and the documentary just did a fantastic job of sort of threading that together and making it work really, really well without sort of feeling forced or anything. Just a really superb documentary, in my opinion. If you're a fan of documentaries, this one's a must-watch. But even if you're just sort of interested in it a little bit based on what I'm saying, I think you'll enjoy it and get a lot out of it. So there are my 20 recommendations for some of the best movies you can currently watch on Netflix. I will keep making videos like this as long as you keep watching them, but thanks for checking this one out, and you will see me on the next one. If you'd like to support the channel, you can do so a number of ways. You can become a Patreon supporter like one of these fine people. You can just like, comment, share. There's a Teespring link where you can pick up one of these custom designed shirts that I did. You can get a free shirt if you become a Patreon supporter, depending on which level you pick. There's an Amazon link in there as well. Just follow that link. Check out some of the Blu-ray deals that I found. And if you just buy anything you were already going to buy on Amazon, the show will get a little bit of kickback as well. So just all great ways to support the show to make sure I can keep... Oh, look how many lights. I got all these lights back here, these lights, the camera, the mic, the computer I edited, all that stuff costs money, and your support helps me get better and better stuff, improve the quality of the show, so I appreciate everyone that already does it. I appreciate you if you're thinking about doing it, but stay tuned. There's going to be plenty more movie talk and movie recommendations coming up in the very near future.